At the end of the last operation, Anj Bey was wounded. Several men were down with malaria, and our unit had been reduced to just 11 fighters. The enemy was increasing its search operations. We knew we had to fight. The problem was how.
Against armored vehicles, artillery, and entire companies of infantry. 11 men stood little chance in a direct battle.
If we made the wrong decision, none of us might come back. Long pause. What happened next began with a single idea from a hunter. During Anj Bey's recovery, I became the acting commander of the unit. That was our standing rule. If I fell, Anj 2 would take over. If Anj 2 was gone, the squad leaders would follow. None of us wanted that rule to be tested. We had only 11 men left, including Anj 2, who was still recovering from his wound. The enemy was conducting aggressive search operations. If we did nothing, they would eventually find us. We had to fight. The question was how. With so few men and so little firepower, a direct battle could easily become a disaster. One mistake could cost us the entire unit. Ang Tu and I called the men together. We explained the situation, our strength, our mission, and how we intended to organize the unit. Everyone listened carefully. No one objected. The initial plan was simple. Anh Tu, still recovering from his wound, would remain at the base with one soldier. Squad leader Tai would continue hunting enemy reconnaissance teams. The rest of us would carry on the work Anj Bey had started. At least, that was the plan. Just as we thought the meeting was over, Ang Tu raised an objection. He wanted to take a B-40 gunner and continue searching for enemy scouts himself. If we spot them from a distance, he said, one B-40 round will be enough. And the base? He shrugged. If the enemy finds it, 2 men won't stop them anyway. The men agreed with Anj Tu, and so the plan changed. Instead of remaining behind, one more fighter joined the combat teams. That gave me 9 men to work with. 9 men. That was all we had. Once the organization was settled, we turned to the real problem. How were we going to fight? The sector command expected to hear gunfire. That meant one thing. We had to keep attacking the enemy. There was no avoiding it. Ideas came from every corner of the bunker. The discussion grew animated. Soon, 2 possible approaches emerged. One was to split into small teams and lay mines separately. The other was to concentrate all 9 men into a single battlefield. Neither option felt right. If we split up, our firepower would be scattered. A small team might score a hit, but if the enemy counterattacked, could 3 men escape encirclement? No one could answer that question. The second option was even more dangerous. We could gather everyone together and fight the way Anh Bey had done before. But what if the enemy arrived with armored vehicles? What if they brought an entire battalion? What then? After presenting both plans, Anh Tu delivered a blunt warning. We run barefoot through the jungle. If things go wrong, who will carry whose body home? The bunker fell silent. No one laughed. No one argued. We all understood exactly what he meant. The enemy had tanks, armored vehicles, heavy weapons, and overwhelming numbers. We had none of those things. The memory of previous losses was still fresh. Courage alone was not enough. Dying bravely might sound noble, but unnecessary sacrifice helped no one. The meeting reached a dead end. Ong Tu and I exchanged glances. Neither of us had an answer. In the end, we dismissed the meeting and told everyone to rest. Maybe a solution would come later. Maybe it wouldn't. The next morning, we met again. Everyone brought new ideas. Everyone searched for a solution, but every proposal seemed to create new problems. The answer still eluded us. Din, a former schoolteacher and one of our best marksmen, suggested sniper attacks. The idea sounded reasonable. A few well-placed shots could harass the enemy, maybe even slow them down. But when we examined the details, the plan quickly fell apart. What would happen after the first shot? Would the sniper escape? Would the enemy flood the area with troops? Would the risk be worth the result? No one could provide convincing answers, and, once again, the discussion stalled. That night, almost nobody slept. The jungle was quiet, but inside every bunker, men lay awake thinking about the next battle, thinking about survival, thinking about failure. If our plan was too weak, the enemy would brush it aside like a buffalo ignoring mosquito bites. If we were careless, we could lose the entire unit. The responsibility weighed heavily on all of us. Near dawn, it was Thao's turn to stand guard. Seeing that I was still awake, he asked quietly, "Can't sleep, Commander?" I shook my head. For a while, we talked in low voices. I explained everything that worried me. The shortage of men, the shortage of explosives, the danger of facing a stronger enemy. Tao listened without interrupting. When I finished, he sat silently for a moment. Then he said, "What if we do it the way we hunted back home? What if we build layers of traps and lure them into the center?" I looked at him. It was such a simple idea, the kind of idea only a hunter would think of, not a military theorist, not a staff officer, just a man who understood how prey behaved. The more I thought about it, the more sense it made. When morning came, I brought Thao's idea to the rest of the unit, and once again, the debate began. We tested every possibility, every weakness, every danger. The men challenged the idea from every angle, but unlike the previous plans, this one survived. For the first time, we could see a path forward. To make sure it would work, we built a sand table model. Tao demonstrated the layout, the traps, the kill zones, the escape routes. Then the rest of us played the role of the enemy. We charged the mock battlefield again and again, searching for flaws, looking for ways to break through. The plan was not perfect. No battlefield plan ever is. But it was good enough, and good enough was all we needed. The tension that had weighed on us for days finally began to lift. Hen Kin made a joke. If we lure them into our trap, and they step on their own mines, wouldn't that be their own stick striking their own back? Laughter filled the bunker for the first time in many days. The burden on our shoulders felt lighter. We had a plan, and soon we would put it to the test. The trap was about to be set. The plan was approved. Now came the hard part. We had to turn an idea into a battlefield, and we had very little time. Every day the enemy patrols moved closer. The trap would be built in 3 layers. Each layer had a different purpose. The outer layer would slow them down. The middle layer would break their formation. The inner layer would deliver the heaviest blow. At least, that was the theory. Tao and Sin took charge of selecting the ground. They moved through the jungle carefully, studying trails, observing movement patterns, searching for the place where the enemy felt most confident. That was where the trap would wait. The chosen area sat along a route frequently used by enemy search teams. It offered concealment, good observation, and multiple escape paths. In our line of work, an escape route was often more important than the ambush itself. Work began immediately. The men split into teams. Some prepared explosives. Others cleared narrow paths through the undergrowth. Everything had to look natural. If the enemy noticed even the smallest sign, the entire operation could fail. The jungle became our workshop. Day after day, we crawled through mud and roots, measuring distances, marking positions, checking angles of fire. No detail was considered too small. The first layer was designed to provoke confusion, a sudden explosion, a wounded soldier, a broken formation. The goal was not destruction. The goal was to make them react exactly as we expected. Once the enemy responded, they would move toward the second layer. That was where the real pressure would begin. More explosives, more hidden dangers, more opportunities for mistakes. Most soldiers believe danger lies ahead. Very few expect danger to surround them. That simple truth became part of our design. We wanted the enemy to feel safe, just before everything changed. The innermost layer contained our strongest charges, the ones we had been saving. Explosives were precious. Every block represented effort, risk, and opportunity. We could not afford to waste them. As the trap took shape, confidence slowly returned. Not overconfidence, never that. Just the belief that perhaps we finally had a chance. Each evening, the men gathered to review the layout. We walked through the plan again and again, testing every movement, every signal, every contingency. There would be no time for hesitation once the battle began. Even Ant 2 became increasingly interested. Though still recovering, he studied every detail, asked difficult questions, and searched for weaknesses. That was his way of helping. Several times, we modified the arrangement, not because it was wrong, but because experience had taught us something important. The enemy rarely behaved exactly as expected. The final version was simpler than the original design, and therefore stronger. Complicated plans often collapse under pressure. Simple plans survive, especially in the jungle. By the time everything was ready, the atmosphere inside the unit had changed completely. Pause. Days earlier, we had been trapped by uncertainty. Now we were waiting, watching, listening, for the enemy to make the first move. Somewhere beyond the trees, enemy patrols continued their search. They had no idea they were being observed, no idea a battlefield had been prepared for them, and no idea how carefully it had been designed. The trap was ready. The men were ready. All that remained was the enemy, and sooner or later they would come. Several days passed. Nothing happened. The jungle remained quiet, too quiet. Every morning we checked the battlefield. Every evening we checked it again. The waiting became its own kind of battle. Some of the younger men grew impatient. They wanted action, results, proof that all our preparation had been worth it. But experience teaches patience. The jungle moves at its own pace. Then, one afternoon, our observation team spotted movement. Not animals, not local villagers, enemy soldiers. At last, the patrol moved cautiously through the trees, stopping frequently, scanning their surroundings, listening. These men were experienced. They had survived for a reason. No one touched a weapon. No one moved. We watched in complete silence. The enemy was still too far away. This was not the moment. The patrol eventually changed direction and disappeared into the forest. No one spoke for several minutes. Then someone whispered, "They'll be back!" He was right. The next day, more signs appeared. Fresh footprints, broken branches, recently disturbed vegetation. The enemy was increasing its activity. That evening, we reviewed the plan once more. No changes, no adjustments. The trap had already been tested dozens of times. Now we needed discipline, not imagination. As darkness settled over the jungle, I found it difficult to sleep. Not because of fear, not because of doubt, but because I knew something was coming. And soon. In war, there are moments when you can almost feel events gathering beyond the horizon. You cannot see them. You cannot stop them. You simply know they are approaching. The following morning, our scouts returned with important news. Enemy search teams had expanded their operating area, and one route in particular passed dangerously close to our trap. That was exactly what we had hoped for, and exactly what we feared. Hope and fear often travel together in combat. You rarely find one without the other. The men checked their weapons, examined every detonator, reviewed every signal. No one joked now. No one complained. The time for discussion was over. As the sun began to set, the jungle seemed unusually still. Even the birds sounded distant. Even the wind felt cautious. Something was about to happen. That night, few of us slept. We lay awake, listening, waiting, thinking. Somewhere out there, the enemy was moving toward us. They just didn't know it yet. Just before dawn, our observation post sent a signal. Movement. Several enemy soldiers were approaching from the northwest. Not a large force, a reconnaissance patrol. Exactly the kind of target we had expected. No one spoke. No one moved unnecessarily. Each man quietly took his assigned position. Months of training and days of preparation had led to this moment. The patrol advanced slowly, stopping every few minutes, listening, watching. These men knew they were operating in dangerous territory. That made them cautious, and caution made them predictable. Through gaps in the vegetation, we watched them approach the first layer, meter by meter, step by step. My heartbeat seemed louder than the jungle itself. The lead soldier paused, looked around, then continued forward. For a moment, I thought he had discovered something, but he hadn't. The trap remained invisible. A few more steps, then a few more. Every man in our unit was focused on the same point. waiting, calculating, holding his breath. The patrol entered the outer zone exactly as planned. Now came the difficult part. Not attacking too early, not losing patience, letting the trap do its work. In combat, timing is everything. A second too soon, and the enemy escapes. A second too late, and the opportunity is gone. The men remained perfectly still. Even the youngest fighters understood. The first explosion was not meant to destroy the enemy. It was meant to control them, control their movement, control their reactions, control their decisions. If we could do that, we could make a small force appear much larger than it really was. The patrol continued forward, unaware, confident, perhaps even slightly bored. After all, they had walked this jungle many times before. Then it happened. A violent explosion shattered the morning silence. The ground shook, birds erupted from the trees, and men were thrown to the ground. For a brief moment, everything froze. The enemy had entered the trap, and now the battle was truly beginning. The explosion threw several enemy soldiers to the ground. Others immediately scattered for cover. Shouts echoed through the trees. Weapons were raised. Everyone was trying to understand what had just happened. Now we waited for the next move. As expected, the surviving soldiers did not retreat. They began searching the surrounding area, carefully, methodically. They believed they had been hit by a single mine, nothing more. The patrol leader began issuing orders. Men spread out through the jungle, checking bushes, tree roots, freshly disturbed soil. Their training told them danger was nearby. They were right. From our concealed positions, we watched every movement. No one touched a weapon. No one broke cover. Patience had brought the enemy this far. Patience would carry them farther. One soldier moved cautiously toward the left flank. Another advanced a few meters ahead of the others. Their formation began to stretch, exactly as we had hoped. In combat, a tight formation can protect a unit. A stretched formation can expose it. The enemy didn't realize it yet, but they were helping us. Several minutes passed. No shots, no movement, no second explosion. The patrol slowly regained confidence. That confidence would soon become their weakness. The lead elements pushed deeper into the area behind them. Others followed, step by careful step. The second layer was waiting. I remember holding my breath, not from fear, but from concentration. Everything depended on timing. Everything depended on discipline. Then, another explosion ripped through the jungle. This one was closer, more violent. Branches snapped. Men shouted. Someone screamed. The patrol immediately dropped to the ground. Some fired blindly into the trees. Others searched desperately for targets. But there were no targets to see, only jungle. Confusion spread faster than the smoke. The enemy could not determine where the attack was coming from, could not identify our strength, could not locate our positions. That uncertainty was our greatest weapon. For a moment, the entire patrol seemed frozen between two choices: advance or withdraw. And that hesitation gave us even more control over the battle. The patrol leader finally made his decision. He chose to advance. Perhaps he believed the danger was already behind him. Perhaps he feared appearing weak in front of his men. Whatever the reason, he moved forward. A few soldiers remained behind to care for the wounded. The rest pushed deeper into the jungle, carefully, patiently, exactly where we wanted them. Watching them advance, I felt the tension growing inside me. Not excitement, not fear, responsibility. Every man under my command depended on the next few minutes. If the trap worked, we would hurt the enemy and withdraw safely. If it failed, we could find ourselves fighting a force far larger than our own. The jungle seemed unusually quiet. Even the birds had disappeared. Only the occasional voice of an enemy soldier drifted through the trees, then faded away again. The leading elements entered the heart of the battlefield. One by one, they crossed invisible lines they could not see, lines we had spent days preparing. Thao lay hidden nearby, completely motionless. The same hunter who had imagined this trap was now waiting to see whether his idea would survive contact with reality. No training exercise could answer that question. No discussion inside a bunker could answer it either. Only battle could. The enemy continued forward. Several more steps, then several more. Closer, closer still. I remember thinking about Aunt Bay. Had we learned enough from him? Had we prepared well enough? Would he approve of what we were doing now? There was no time to answer those questions. The battlefield was about to answer them for us. Suddenly, the third layer came alive. A massive explosion tore through the jungle, far more powerful than the previous two. The shockwave rolled through the trees. Earth and debris flew into the air. Men were thrown from their feet. For an instant, everything disappeared behind smoke and dust. No one could see clearly. No one could understand what had happened. Not even the enemy. Then came the shouting, the confusion, the panic. Orders were being given. Other orders were being ignored. The patrol had lost control. That was the moment we had been waiting for. Not the explosion itself, the confusion that followed. That confusion was worth more than explosives. For the first time, the enemy no longer dictated the battle. We did. And everyone on both sides could feel the difference. The enemy patrol was no longer moving as a single unit. Some men rushed toward the wounded. Others searched for cover. Others simply followed the nearest voice. Their coordination was breaking down. That was exactly what our plan had been designed to achieve. Not destruction alone. Disorganization, confusion, the loss of initiative. A well-trained unit can recover from casualties. It can recover from fear. But recovering from confusion is much harder, especially in unfamiliar terrain. For several minutes, the enemy remained trapped inside their own uncertainty. Every movement felt dangerous. Every patch of ground looked suspicious. The jungle itself had become an enemy. I watched through the foliage, trying to understand what they would do next. Would they continue forward? Would they retreat? Would they call for reinforcements? Any of those choices could change the battle. The patrol leader was still trying to regain control. We could hear his voice, sharp, confident, determined. He was an experienced soldier. That much was obvious. Little by little, the patrol began pulling itself together. Men regrouped. Positions were reassigned. Orders were acknowledged. The confusion was fading, and that created a new problem for us. The longer they remained alive, the greater the chance they would discover something. A hidden position, a footprint, a sign we had overlooked. No trap lasts forever. Sooner or later, someone begins to understand it. And once that happens, the advantage starts to disappear. I glanced toward the positions of our men. Everyone remained disciplined. No unnecessary movement. No careless mistakes. Months of operating behind enemy lines had taught us that lesson. Then something happened that caught my attention. A small group of enemy soldiers began moving cautiously along the edge of the battlefield. Not toward the center, around it. They were probing, searching for a safer route, searching for answers, searching for us. At that moment, I realized the battle was entering a new phase. The trap had done its work. Now, intelligence would decide the outcome. Not explosives, not luck, observation. Who would understand the battlefield first, us or them? That question suddenly became more important than everything else. I felt a familiar pressure settle over me. The same pressure every commander feels. The responsibility for other men's lives. That burden never becomes lighter. The patrol leader and I had never met. We could not see each other. Yet at that moment, we were playing the same game, trying to read each other's intentions, trying to predict the next move. One mistake could decide everything. A careless step, a misunderstood order, a moment of impatience. In war, that is often all it takes. The enemy soldiers on the flank continued their careful advance, slowly, patiently, stopping every few meters. These men were no longer searching for mines. They were searching for the people who had planted them. That made them far more dangerous. A man afraid of explosives watches the ground. A man hunting other men watches everything. Slow. For several tense minutes, neither side gained an advantage. The jungle seemed frozen. Every movement felt important. Every sound carried meaning. Then one of the enemy soldiers stopped suddenly. He pointed toward a patch of disturbed vegetation. My heart sank. Had we missed something? The entire patrol focused on the area. Weapons came up. Men shifted positions. For a moment, I thought our concealment had been compromised. Nobody moved. Nobody fired. Nobody panicked. If there was one lesson Ong Bey had drilled into us, it was this: never help the enemy confirm his suspicions. The soldier examined the ground, looked around carefully, then signaled to the others. A few moments later, the patrol moved on. Only then did I realize I had been holding my breath. Sometimes the most exhausting moments in combat are the silent ones. Not the firefights, not the explosions, the waiting. As the enemy resumed its search, their leader appeared increasingly cautious. The confidence we had seen earlier was gone now. Every decision carried doubt. And doubt is contagious. One uncertain man affects another, then another, then another. Soon, an entire unit begins to hesitate. That hesitation bought us time. Time to observe. time to think, time to prepare for whatever came next. In war, time is often the most valuable resource of all. The sun continued its slow climb through the sky. The jungle grew hotter, the air heavier, yet neither side was willing to make a reckless move. Somewhere nearby, a wounded enemy soldier cried out in pain, then fell silent. The sound lingered in my mind longer than I expected. War teaches many lessons. One of them is that suffering sounds the same in every language. Pain does not care which side you fight for. For a brief moment, I wondered what that wounded soldier was thinking. Did he believe he would survive? Did he expect help? Did he have a family waiting somewhere? The thought passed quickly. Battlefields rarely allow much time for reflection. Reality soon returned. An urgent signal moved through the enemy patrol. Men began repositioning, more rapidly now, more deliberately. Something had changed. The patrol leader had reached a conclusion. Perhaps not the correct one, but a conclusion nonetheless. And that made him dangerous again. The patrol leader gathered several men around him. They spoke briefly, pointed toward different sections of the jungle, then separated again. Whatever decision had been made, it was now being put into action. I watched carefully, trying to read the pattern, trying to understand his intentions. A good commander does not simply react, he anticipates. Little by little, the answer became clear. The enemy was no longer searching randomly. They were narrowing their focus. They had begun to think. That realization troubled me. Not because I underestimated them, but because I respected them. Any enemy who survives long enough learns valuable lessons. The patrol leader understood something important. Mines do not place themselves. Ambushes do not prepare themselves. If a trap existed, then the people responsible could not be far away. And he was right. That was exactly the danger we had been trying to avoid from the beginning. A small search element began moving toward one of our outer observation positions. Carefully, patiently, meter by meter, the distance between us was shrinking. I found myself thinking about the 11 men under my command again. Only 11. How many of them would still be standing when this was over? That question never truly leaves a commander. Before a battle, during a battle, and even after a battle, it follows you everywhere. The search team continued forward. Branches moved, leaves shifted. The jungle whispered around them. Closer, closer still. For the first time that day, I began preparing myself for direct contact. The trap had achieved its purpose. Now we might have to defend it. No one wanted that. A firefight would change everything. Noise attracts attention. Attention attracts reinforcements. And reinforcements attract trouble. Behind the patrol, the wounded were still being treated. The battlefield remained disorganized, yet slowly, steadily, the enemy was recovering. That was the nature of experienced troops. They bent, but they did not break. The longer they survived, the harder they became to defeat. I glanced toward Thao's position. Though I could not see him, I knew he was watching the same problem unfold. The hunter's trap had worked. Now came the hunter's patience. A sudden burst of movement caught my attention. One enemy soldier dropped to a knee, raised his weapon, and stared into the trees, straight toward one of our concealed areas. For several seconds, nothing happened. No shot, no signal, no movement. Long pause. The jungle seemed to stop breathing. Then the soldier slowly lowered his rifle, looked away, and continued moving once again. The danger passed, but the message was clear. The enemy was getting closer. Not physically, mentally. They were beginning to understand the battlefield. I reminded myself to stay calm. The enemy was adapting. That was expected. No plan survives unchanged. Once a battle begins, the important thing was adapting faster than they did. Around me, the men remained disciplined. No unnecessary signals, no careless movement. Each of them understood what was at stake. Not just the mission, their lives. The search team paused again. One soldier knelt beside a damaged section of ground, studying it carefully. He was trying to reconstruct what had happened, trying to see the battlefield through our eyes. That thought stayed with me. Every battle is really two battles. The one you fight, and the one you imagine your enemy is fighting. The better you understand the second battle, the greater your chance of surviving the first. That lesson had been paid for with blood many times before. A signal passed through the enemy formation. Several men began moving back toward the wounded. Others continued searching. The patrol leader was dividing his attention. That meant he was under pressure. Pressure forces decisions, and decisions create opportunities. The question was whether we could recognize those opportunities in time. Only 11 men remained under my command. How should I use them? How much risk should I accept? How many lives could I gamble to achieve the objective? Those questions never appear on maps. They are never written in orders. Yet every commander carries them, every single day. The jungle heat continued to rise. Sweat ran into my eyes. Insects moved through the undergrowth, and still nobody fired a shot. To an outsider, the battlefield might have looked inactive. But beneath the silence, both sides were working desperately, watching, thinking, calculating. Then something unexpected happened. One of the enemy soldiers began moving toward an area we had considered unimportant, a place outside the center of the trap, a place we had paid little attention to. Immediately, my concern returned. Not because he had discovered us, but because battlefields have a way of exposing assumptions. And assumptions can be dangerous. I remembered something Anj Bey often said: the enemy gets a vote. No matter how carefully you plan, the enemy always has a say in the outcome. At the time, I hadn't fully appreciated those words. Now I did. Because the battle was beginning to move beyond our original design. The trap had worked. The enemy had suffered losses. Confusion had spread. But no battle ends exactly where you expect it to. That is where experience becomes important. I glanced once more toward the positions of our men. Though hidden from view, I felt connected to each of them. Their families were far away, their futures uncertain, and at that moment, their lives rested partly in my hands. That responsibility never becomes easier. Not after one battle. Not after 10. Not after 100. If anything, it becomes heavier. The enemy soldier continued moving through the brush, slowly, carefully, examining everything around him. He was not rushing. That worried me. An impatient soldier makes mistakes. A careful soldier creates problems. This man seemed determined to understand exactly what had happened here. For several minutes, he advanced without interruption, stopping only to observe, to listen, to think. The battlefield had become a puzzle, and he was trying to solve it. I found myself wondering what kind of experience he carried. How many patrols had he survived? How many ambushes had he seen? Men like that rarely underestimate danger. Nearby, other members of the patrol continued reorganizing. The wounded were being treated. Security positions were established. Order was slowly returning. That concerned me more than the explosions. A confused enemy is dangerous. A recovered enemy is even more dangerous. The battle had already entered a different stage. No longer a trap, no longer a surprise. Now it was becoming a contest of judgment. Who would make the better decisions? Who would remain patient longer? Who would make the first serious mistake? Those questions would decide the outcome. A movement to my right caught my attention. One of our observation men was signaling quietly. Enemy activity. More movement than before. I studied the area through gaps in the foliage at first. I saw nothing unusual. Then I noticed it. Additional soldiers. Not many, just enough to matter. The patrol leader had begun reinforcing the area he considered important. That meant his suspicions were narrowing. The realization sent a chill through me. Not fear, just clarity. The battle was moving faster than before. For days, we had controlled the pace. We chose the ground. We chose the timing. We chose the trap. Now the enemy was beginning to influence events as well. That is the nature of combat. No advantage lasts forever. Every advantage must be defended, and every success creates new problems. I thought again about our small force. Only 11 men. 11 men facing an enemy that could call for reinforcements at any moment. The longer the battle continued, the less favorable our position would become. That fact was impossible to ignore. Time was no longer entirely on our side. Somewhere ahead, the patrol leader was reaching conclusions, and so was I. The question was, whose conclusions would prove more accurate? The jungle remained quiet. Yet beneath that silence, two groups of men were studying each other, trying to predict, trying to adapt, trying to survive. Neither side could see the future. Neither side knew exactly what would happen next. But both sides understood one thing. The decisive moment was approaching. Thank you for spending this time with me. These stories are not fiction. They are memories, carried across many decades, and preserved so they will not be forgotten. If you enjoyed this chapter, please like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. I look forward to seeing you in Part 8. Until then, take care, and thank you for listening.